Have you ever found yourself in a conversation with a girl, sensing something beneath the surface but unable to quite name it? There's a good chance she's already been signaling her interest in ways that are easy to overlook. Once you understand how these quiet signals actually work, the confusion disappears almost instantly. Today, we're breaking down the real psychology behind how women express attraction when they're not ready to say it out loud. These are the moments most people walk right past, the subtle, almost invisible cues that reveal exactly where her head is at. Once you start recognizing them, you'll never read an interaction the same way again. Here's something important to understand first. Many women don't feel comfortable showing direct interest early on. Instead, they find smaller, lower risk ways to test the waters and gauge your reaction before revealing anything openly. If you've ever felt like you were trying to decode something without having the right key, that's exactly what's happening. The signals are already there. You just need to know what you're actually looking at. So let's walk through the clearest behaviors women use when they're quietly trying to figure out if you feel the same way. Some of these are barely noticeable at first. Others are a little more visible once you know the pattern. But every single one of them carries real meaning. And staying with this until the end will change how you see these moments entirely. One of the earliest signs to watch for is when she starts playfully pushing against your boundaries. She might laugh and say something like, "I bet you wouldn't even take me out for dinner," or toss out a casual challenge like, "What would you even do if I just grabbed your jacket right now?" On the surface, it feels like harmless joking, but underneath there's a very specific purpose. She's watching how you respond. Will you lean into it with ease? Will you match her energy? Or will you stay flat and distant? Sometimes she'll shift a little closer while she's talking or make a small move just to see what your face does. These aren't random moments, they're quiet experiments. When you respond in a relaxed, playful way, it communicates that you're comfortable with her and open to the dynamic she's creating. When you pull back or stay too serious, she reads that as disinterest and begins to quietly withdraw. The whole thing isn't about catching you off guard. It's about her trying to understand where she stands without having to ask directly. Another sign comes through in the compliments she gives you, which often feel simple but are more deliberate than they appear. She might say you're genuinely funny, that your sense of style always works, or that you have a way of coming up with ideas she actually finds impressive. It sounds like casual conversation, but the intention behind it is usually much more conscious. She's reaching toward a connection and watching how you receive her attention. She might tell you that a certain color looks great on you, or that she always notices how sharp your thinking is, and then she'll hold just a beat of silence waiting to see what you do with that. That pause is her opening a small door. If you smile, acknowledge it, or offer something kind back, she registers that as a green light. If she keeps coming back with more personal compliments over time, it almost always means she's working her way closer to you, just doing it gradually so it doesn't feel too exposed. There's another behavior that often gets completely misread, and that's the way she uses silence inside a conversation. After saying something, she'll sometimes stop and simply wait instead of filling the space herself. It's not awkward silence, even if it feels that way. It's intentional. She might mention that she's been thinking about taking a trip somewhere and then just pause. That gap is an invitation. She's giving you the room to step in, ask about it, show that you're curious and engaged. If you walk through that door and keep the conversation alive, it tells her you're genuinely present. If you let the silence sit without responding much, she starts to wonder if you're really invested at all. These quiet spaces are actually a very low-risk way for her to check your interest without putting herself in a vulnerable position. Something else she might do is quietly test whether you actually remember things she's told you before. She'll bring up something small from an earlier conversation, a band she mentioned, a movie she recommended, something she said she'd been wanting to do. She might ask if you ever looked up that film she told you about, or mention that the band she talked about is coming to town soon. What she's really doing is checking whether you were actually listening. When you remember those details and respond with genuine interest, she feels seen. When you draw a blank or seem uncertain, she quietly files that away as a signal that maybe you weren't paying close attention. This isn't a trap. It's her way of finding out if you care enough to hold on to the small things she shares. Then there are the hypothetical scenarios she introduces out of nowhere. You're in the middle of a normal conversation, and she suddenly asks something like, "Okay, but imagine if we went on a road trip together. Who do you think would get us lost first? Or what would you do if we ended up stranded on some deserted island?" These questions aren't random. They're a way of placing the two of you inside an imagined world together and watching how you react to that idea. She's checking your comfort level with the concept of more time spent together, seeing whether you engage with it warmly or deflect from it. It keeps everything light and playful, but the curiosity underneath is very real. When you play along, build on the scenario, and joke back with her, you're showing her you're open to that kind of closeness. When you change the subject or don't engage, she quietly concludes that you're not really interested in going anywhere deeper with her. Now, all of these individual signals might seem small when you look at them one at a time, but together they form a clear and consistent pattern. When a woman is drawn to someone but not ready to say it plainly, she channels that feeling into testing, teasing, pausing, and gentle curiosity. Learning to recognize these moments gives you an entirely different lens for understanding what's actually being communicated beneath the words. Those playful what-if conversations are especially worth paying attention to. They feel casual on the surface, but they're often her way of checking the chemistry between you two without having to openly admit she's thinking about it. By building these little imaginary situations, she gets to observe how you react to the idea of being in more personal, more connected moments with her. Engaging with that openly tells her you're emotionally available and comfortable with her presence. Pulling away or not engaging tells her the opposite. These brief exchanges are her way of keeping things easy and unserious while still gathering exactly the information she needs. Another pattern to notice is when she starts asking about your schedule. She'll slip it in casually, something like, "What are you up to this weekend?" Or "Have you been keeping busy after work lately?" It sounds like filler conversation, but it's usually not. She's quietly mapping out whether there's room in your life for her. Sometimes she'll mention wanting to check out a new restaurant or try something she's heard about, essentially floating the idea without fully committing to an invitation, waiting to see if you'll pick it up and run with it. When you respond with interest or naturally include her in the idea, it signals openness. When you stay vague or don't engage with the hint, she takes that to mean you're not looking to move things forward. Playful teasing is another one of her most natural tools. It's light and energetic, never cutting, and it's designed to create a spark while testing whether you can meet her where she is. She might tell you that you're terrible at something and that she'd have to teach you, or act surprised by something you're into. These little comments aren't criticism disguised as jokes. They're invitations to banter. When you tease her back, keep the energy moving, and match her playfulness, she reads that as real chemistry. When you take it too literally or shut it down, the vibe shifts and she starts to sense you two might not click in the way she was hoping. This is her way of feeling out whether your personalities actually have that natural, easy energy together. Everything here points to the same underlying truth. When a woman is genuinely interested but not yet ready to say it out loud, she expresses it through small, careful, and playful behavior. Jokes, questions, silences, teasing, and those quiet little emotional cues, each one is her way of checking your interest, your comfort, and how you hold yourself around her. When you start recognizing these patterns for what they actually are, you realize none of it was random. Every moment was intentional. Every signal had a purpose. The real shift happens when you stop guessing and start understanding the intention behind what she's doing. Attention is what creates clarity. When you learn to read these moments correctly, you stop feeling confused and start seeing the connection for exactly what it is. If this gave you a new way of seeing things, pass it along to someone who could use the perspective.